What single weapon shattered Japan's grip on the Pacific and flipped the script of World War II? It wasn't a bomb, it wasn't a battleship. It was two brutal pieces of American engineering machine guns, born from the mind of a man who hated complexity almost as much as he hated failure. John Moses Browning didn't just design weapons, he built war-winning firepower. And when those weapons hit the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal, they didn't whisper, they roared. By the time American forces landed on Guadalcanal in August 1942, they carried with them two machine guns that proved so devastatingly effective that Japanese soldiers bestowed fearful nicknames upon them, and their command structure eventually resorted to copying American designs in desperation. The Browning M1919 and M2 machine guns didn't just provide firepower, they sparked a tactical revolution that Japanese military doctrine centered on precision, discipline, and bayonet charges simply could not counter. This is the untold story of how the Browning M1919 and the monstrous .50 caliber M2 didn't just outgun the Japanese. They broke their doctrine, their morale, and ultimately their war effort. They were loud, relentless, mechanically brutal, and unlike anything the Imperial Japanese Army had faced before. But how could two machine guns turn the tide of a war waged across oceans and islands? What made American firepower so overwhelming? And why was Japan so utterly unprepared for it? To understand that, we have to rewind. Not just to the factories and test ranges of the US, but to the very heart of Japanese military philosophy, a system built on discipline, precision, and the belief that spirit could outfight steel. The Browning machine guns would prove them wrong, repeatedly, devastatingly. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these two weapons earned terrifying nicknames from Japanese soldiers, why their sound alone could end an attack, and how American firepower wasn't just stronger, it was smarter. Because this isn't just a story about guns, it's about a showdown between worldviews, the battle between engineering and ideology, simplicity versus tradition, steel versus spirit. And it begins with the man who made the machine that crushed the rising Sunday. To understand why American machine guns shocked Japanese forces so profoundly, we have to compare two completely different ways of thinking about war. Japan didn't just train soldiers, it molded warriors. Their doctrine was built on centuries of samurai tradition. Honor, discipline, precision, and above all, belief in the power of the human spirit. Japanese military leaders believed that courage could overcome any technological disadvantage. Their tactics reflected that faith close-quarter bayonet charges, tight formations, and a relentless offensive mindset. And their weapons? They matched that philosophy. The Japanese Type 92 heavy machine gun, nicknamed the Woodpecker by American troops, was slow, methodical, and deadly accurate at long range. But it was also complex, fragile, and poorly suited for the brutal conditions of jungle warfare. It required oiling before firing, had a cumbersome 30-round feed strip, and jammed easily when dirt or humidity crept in. It was a machine built for ideal conditions, not for chaos. This is where the philosophies split. The US military wasn't chasing elegance, it was chasing effectiveness. And thanks to John Browning's designs, American forces entered the Pacific War with machine guns that emphasized one thing above all: overwhelming, relentless firepower. The M1919 and M2 didn't aim to shoot prettier, they aimed to shoot more and keep shooting. Where Japanese doctrine emphasized surgical precision and spiritual strength, American forces brought a new kind of warfare: mechanical dominance, battlefield flexibility, and a brutal understanding that volume of fire could break even the most disciplined assault. This was the clash at the heart of the Pacific War, not just between nations, but between philosophies. One side believed discipline could stop bullets. The other brought more bullets than anyone thought possible, and they never stopped coming. Before the Pacific jungles echoed with the roar of machine guns, it all started in a quiet gunsmith shop in Ogden, Utah. John Moses Browning wasn't born into war, he was born into craftsmanship. Raised in a family of gunsmiths, Browning learned from an early age that a weapon had to do one thing above all else: work no matter what. That principle, brutal simplicity, became the core of his genius. While European designers obsessed over perfection and complexity, Browning took a different path. He believed that a good weapon didn't need elegance. It needed to survive dirt, sand, mud, panic, fear, and chaos. His guns weren't just tools, they were lifelines. The first Browning machine gun to see combat was the water-cooled M1917. It could fire continuously for nearly an hour without overheating, a godsend in trench warfare. But it was heavy, and as America faced a new kind of war in the Pacific, Browning's designs evolved. Enter the M1919. Air-cooled, rugged, and lighter than its predecessor, it retained the same rock-solid reliability. Troops could move it, mount it quickly, and keep it firing under hellish conditions. It wasn't just an upgrade, it was a battlefield revolution. Then came the M2, Browning's masterpiece. A .50 caliber beast capable of tearing through vehicles, fortifications, and morale. Its power was so overwhelming, its sound so distinctive, that Japanese troops began identifying it by ear and fearing it. And despite its immense power, the M2 remained astonishingly reliable. It didn't jam, it didn't care about mud, it just worked. But the genius wasn't just in power, it was in simplicity. Sliding block mechanisms, fewer moving parts, easy to maintain, even easier to trust. That's what separated Browning's guns from the rest. He didn't build weapons to impress. He built them to survive war and to win it. The true test of Browning's machine guns came not in theory or training, but on the blood-soaked banks of Alligator Creek in August 1942. The US Marines had just landed on Guadalcanal, a key strategic island in the Solomon chain. It was hot, humid, and crawling with danger. On the night of the 20th of August, Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's elite Japanese force launched a full frontal assault on the Marine perimeter. They had no idea what awaited them. Ichiki's men weren't rookies. They were veterans of brutal campaigns in China, disciplined, fearless, and trained to charge straight into enemy lines. Their tactic: overwhelm American positions with coordinated bayonet charges under cover of night. But this wasn't China, and the Americans weren't retreating. As the first wave crossed the river, Browning Monet 1917 second and Monet 1919 second opened fire. What followed wasn't just resistance, it was annihilation. The Browning machine guns didn't fire in bursts. They screamed, pouring thousands of rounds into the darkness. Interlocking fields of fire stitched death across the riverbanks. Japanese soldiers fell before they could even raise their rifles, and when one gun overheated or jammed, another picked up the slack instantly. The water-cooled Monet 1917 second, with their insane endurance, kept up their rate of fire for hours. Their barrels glowed red, but they never stopped. The air-cooled Monet 1919 second roared from concealed foxholes, mowing down wave after wave. And through it all, Marines held the line not just with courage, but with superior firepower. Private Al Schmid, wounded and half-blinded, manned his Browning for hours, racking up over 200 confirmed kills. He wasn't a hero because he stood his ground. He was a hero because his weapon allowed him to. And he wasn't alone. All along the line, Browning machine gunners created a wall of fire no human charge could cross. Ammo was passed by hand, belts fed through grit-covered hands, barrels swapped out in seconds. This was coordinated chaos, and it worked. By dawn, over 800 of Ichiki's 900 men were dead. The Japanese command was stunned. The attack had been expected to break American lines. Instead, it broke Japanese confidence. Guadalcanal proved a new truth. Spirit alone couldn't stop steel. And the sound of a Browning machine gun became a death sentence for anyone on the wrong side of the barrel. Guadalcanal was just the beginning. As the war surged across the Pacific through Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, the Browning machine guns proved their worth again and again. The M1919 became the backbone of American fire teams. It was reliable, mobile enough to reposition quickly, and devastating when deployed correctly. But it wasn't just about the gun itself, it was how the Americans used it. They didn't set up one machine gun and hope it held the line. They created overlapping fields of fire, layered defenses, and interlocking kill zones that left no avenue of approach uncovered. If one gunner was taken out, another picked up the lane. If one position was lost, the others compensated. It was a network of fire, mechanical and merciless. Entire hillsides and beaches became zones where no enemy could advance without walking into a wall of lead. And then there was the M2. The .50 caliber Modus was terrifying not just because of what it could hit, but because of what it could stop. Light vehicles, fortified bunkers, low-flying aircraft. A burst from the M2 could turn cover into a coffin. A single bullet could disable a truck. Two could rip through sandbags. A short burst could collapse an enemy's will to fight. Its sound became legend, a deep, guttural roar that echoed across the battlefield. Japanese troops learned to recognize it instantly. Many took cover before the first bullets landed. The psychological effect was just as powerful as the physical damage. For many Japanese units, the sound alone meant the battle was already lost. American troops innovated constantly. Aircraft-mounted M2 second were repurposed into portable configurations. Infantry squads made field mods to increase the rate of fire. Ammunition belts were waterproofed, barrels pre-positioned, and tripods reinforced. Supply chains ensured that ammo was always flowing because these weapons could chew through thousands of rounds in a single engagement. Meanwhile, Japanese machine guns struggled to keep up. Their weapons, with limited capacity and fussy maintenance needs, couldn't compete with the brutal efficiency of American firepower. This wasn't just technological superiority, it was tactical evolution. Browning's guns weren't just powerful. They were the centerpiece of a system designed to dominate the battlefield through sustained, overwhelming force. In the Pacific, victory didn't come from elegance. It came from fire. And the Brownings brought more of it than anyone else. By the war's end, the Browning machine guns had done more than win battles. They had rewritten the rules of modern warfare. The M1919 and M2 weren't just effective, they were enduring. Their success wasn't a fluke or a lucky match of weapon to terrain. It was proof that brutal simplicity, smart logistics, and overwhelming firepower could break even the most fanatical resistance. Japan, once confident in the supremacy of spirit and discipline, was forced to confront a harsh truth. Technology, when wielded with purpose and precision, could shatter ideology. Desperate to match American firepower, Japanese engineers began copying the very designs they had once dismissed, but it was too late. The gap was no longer technological, it was systemic. America wasn't just fielding better weapons. It was fielding a war machine built on adaptation, innovation, and production at a scale the world had never seen. Even decades later, the legacy of Browning's guns lives on. The M2, virtually unchanged, still serves in modern militaries. Its voice, that thunderous bark, continues to echo in conflicts around the world. But beyond the hardware, there's a deeper legacy. Browning's machine guns represent the moment when American industry, ingenuity, and tactical evolution came together to create battlefield dominance. They remind us that the most powerful weapons are those built not just for power, but for purpose. And in the hands of those who carried them, Marines pinned down on beaches, soldiers holding ridgelines, gunners staring down, charging enemies. These weapons became symbols of resilience, resolve, and raw, unyielding force. The Pacific War didn't just end with surrender. It ended with the roar of machine guns. And in that roar, Japan's myth of invincibility was drowned out one round at a time. If you found this story as powerful as we did, hit that like button, share it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the weapons and warriors that shaped history.